tough because if the civilians are like this, the uniform people have to be better. But I remember just saying, "Wow, people love each other," in this crisis. And at that point, the sergeant said, "We got to go to Tower 2." Again, still didn't know what was going on. We're just listening to whatever the sergeant said. But we got to Tower 2, to the vestibule area of the lobby of Tower 2, and there's all these revolving doors. And the sergeant said, "I got to go down to an emergency room, another E room." He took the rest of the guys and said, "Jimeno, stay with the cart." And I remember looking out through the glass, and you could see some people had passed. There were people injured, but there was these sounds that kept happening when you got near the side of the building. There were these big booms, and there's a difference between concrete hitting the ground and a human body hitting the ground. And I kept hearing that sound of a human body hitting, because people unfortunately kept jumping.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, it really, really broke my heart because, I know for me, when I became a cop, and every cop that gets on the job, it's to protect and serve, and you felt minute because you couldn't.
It was beyond, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was killing us. Every rescue worker, from the cops, the firefighters, EMTs, and I remember at that point, another officer from the George Washington Bridge, Bruce Reynolds. Mm-hmm. He was a great guy, black guy. He was the only guy in the St. Patty's Day parade, that black gentleman who would color his head cream because he always said he was Irish. He was married to a beautiful Irish woman.
Right.
And Bruce shouldn't have been in the buildings. Bruce had actually had a condition prior that he shouldn't have been in the buildings. But that shows you the level of dedication from our guys and everybody that day. And Bruce came up to me being a senior officer. I was only a rookie, had 9 months on the job.
Wow.
Said, he said, Bruce Reynolds, GWB, George Washington Bridge. I said, Jimeno, BT, bus terminal. And he said, kid, it's going to be a long day, but we're going to get a lot of people home. And, I needed that at that point. And he rested a little bit because he was tired. Mm-hmm. A couple minutes, he started walking away, and that's when my team came up. The sergeant said, "Come on, we're heading to Tower 1. We started heading to Tower 1 down the lobby. We ended up stopping to talk to, a fire brigade. My sergeant telling the leader of their squad, be careful. I've been downstairs, the elevator shafts are buckling. Whatever hit us really, really bad, and it's hit the base." Mm. And they started walking away, and that's when the sergeant got on the radio. Well, our inspector started calling him, and he started asking, they were talking, and I think the sergeant was saying, "Is there something wrong with Tower 2? And that's when we heard a humongous boom. I turned around from where we came, and I could look out into the lobby of 2, and I just saw a humongous fireball, the size of my house. Hmm. And that's when the sergeant said, run to your left. There was an elevator, hallway that led to an elevator, straight elevator. And I remember just something I learned in the military. When you follow a good leader, listen to what he says, because that's going to be a difference between life and death. And I remember Dominic running first. I ran behind Dominic, and I could see the sergeant coming behind me. And we hit the hallway, and that's when I saw the lights started flickering. And I could see brown coming down. Today I know what it was. It was actually, Tower 2 coming down. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know. And I just remember getting picked up, slammed, and it happened so quickly. But, I went for my radio. I kept calling 813, which is the Port Authority code for officer down. And I'm trying to, give our location. I kept getting bombarded, and something hit my hand. I lost my radio, my mic. As soon as it came down, it was over, it seemed like. But unfortunately, at that point, we were trapped in a very tight little compartment. I could see a hole above me about 20 to 30 feet, and I was buried. And Dominic was buried to my left side. I couldn't see the sergeant. He was about 15 feet back, but it was all concrete. And at that point, when I started, the sergeant had said, "Sound off," so we can, see where everybody was. And just Dominic Pizzullo, myself, and Sergeant McLaughlin. That's all we heard.
Well, we're going to... At this point, you were trapped at this point, so we're going to take a break right here. We are speaking to Port Authority Police Detective retired Will Jimeno, who was in the World Trade Center on the 9/11, 2001. This is at the point where we're discussing where he was and what happened, and we're at the point now where Will was trapped in the concourse, and we'll be back with more right after this.
All right, we're back. We're going to continue our special interview with Will Jimeno. He is a Port Authority police officer who was trapped underneath the concourse of the World Trade Center on 9/11/2001. Let's hear more of his story.
All right, everybody, we're back. I'm Tony Salimo. You're listening to College Hill Perspective, and today we're looking back at 9/11/2001. That was the day, of course, with the World Trade Centers attacked by terrorists, Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon, and the crash out in Pennsylvania, the 9/11 memorial. Today at 3 o'clock at the college, right at the memorial on the Connor Green, where we actually have the memorial monument, which is set up there right at the center of the campus as you enter it, and you can see the beam and the monument, which was brought from the World Trade Center. And with us this morning is Will Jimeno. He is the Port Authority police detective retired who was trapped in the World Trade Center, one of the few survivors of that day, who's been telling his riveting story of what led up to the time when he was actually trapped underneath the concourse. Will be speaking at the event on this afternoon, so make sure you come out and remember so that we will never forget. Will, let's pick it up. You were now trapped under the concourse. This is after Tower 2 collapsed, right?
Yeah, the first time when it came down, and we had at this point unfortunately lost Antonio Rodriguez and Christopher Moroso from the first collapse, and we were trapped. And I was after we kind of saw what happened to us. I was trapped. My whole left side of the body was buried under concrete. Dominic shimmied himself out and was trying to get out, and he got over me in a small compartment. And he had a hard decision to make whether to try to go up for help or get us out. And the sergeant said, "Dom, get Jimeno out, and then you two get me out." And Dominic tried for probably another 20, 25 minutes. He kept trying to get the concrete off me. It kept coming back, and because I had a piece of rebar that was attached to a piece of concrete that kept whipping back. And that whole time, Dominic really tried to get me out. And unfortunately, in that time period, Tower 1 started collapsing. I heard a humongous sound coming down again, and said, "Dom, this might be it." So he backed up a couple feet, and I could hear the sergeant yelling. I just crossed my arms and made the sign language of "I love you," because that's what I always told my wife. I would signal it to my kids and my wife. And again, we started getting bombarded, slammed. I could hear the sergeant yelling, and I could see Dominic. And Dominic, unfortunately, something came through the little compartment we're in and slammed him down like a rag doll. And it was over. And I felt more pressure. My sergeant at this point was yelling because when the initial collapse, he was in a fetus position. He was just kind of stuck. Now he's being crushed. And when the dust cleared, you could barely see because there was a little bit of light in there. Dominic had sustained a life-threatening injury, and he was passing. And in his last moments, he cracked a joke. He asked for a 3.7, a 3.8, which is a break on our job. And the sergeant said, "Yeah, found take a break." And Dom was passing. He was, unfortunately, his internal injuries were severe, and as he was passing, he said, "Willie, don't ever forget I died trying to save you guys." I said, "Dom, I would never let anybody forget that, As he's passing, he pulled out his sidearm and he fired it up in the air into that hole that was above us as a last-ditch effort for someone to hear us. And that's when he passed. He fell over. His weapon fell down to the ground, and we had lost now our third team member. And we still didn't know what happened. We never knew that the buildings had collapsed.
Right.
The sergeant was under the impression that there might have been terrorists that what they do in the Middle East, where they'll bring in the first responders,
right,
and then hit us again, and that's what he thought was happening. At this point, it started a long ordeal of just basic survival. I mean, we had fire fall into the hole that was going to burn me. After those, it never got to me, but it got close enough to give me some burns, but they kept putting themselves out. Later, those fireballs ended up lighting off. They were so hot, they made Dominic's gun fire. So I had about 15 rounds go above my head. And you got to understand, this is a very small fire. I had maybe a foot above me that I could stretch my hand up to, and then we were just encased in concrete. So it was pretty grueling. I mean, for the next several hours, I said I hadn't made my peace with God because I just wanted to die. I mean, we had been crushed, burnt. The gun had gone off. I lost 3 teammates. And I remember just closing